What's going on, guys? This is Heather Coco Senza, Coco Shanwaya Sal Heather Gillespie here for episode 4. Yeah, episode 4. And that includes the little 3.5 episode bonus from the other day. I want to welcome you guys to the show. We're at the library, so if you hear library noises, that would be why. Xavier and I are just here doing some fashion research. We've been really super interested in draping lately. I don't know if you guys are into fashion, but just like making something from nothing, because we don't have a lot of clothes with us on the road out here, living like savages as we've been. And we're going to get into details about what I mean by living as a savage. But we've got to get there. I've got to catch you up, which is why I said the first season, approximately 12 to 15 webisode podcast episodes are going to be spent getting you guys caught up on how we got here. Now, when you're coming from a place of love, right, you're listening with an open mind, and that's all that I can really afford to have here with me. If you guys are not listening from a place of love, you should probably just tune out. On the previous episodes, we got to the point where Dylan had just gotten released from prison. I waited for him 5 years after being coerced and groomed into sex work, with both positive and many negative experiences, out of that situation. I was begging for help. I was suicidal. I was being the best mother I could be to all 3 of my children. And my day typically consisted of taking care of the kids, getting them to school, feeding them, or getting them after they got out of school. My ex's parents helped out a lot with transportation. But other than that, it was me alone in the home. So I would talk to Dylan 4 or 5 hours a day on the phone from prison. And this is for a 4.5, almost 5-year period. I would pick up the kids, I would cook dinner, I would help them with homework, give them a shower, clean the house, and then I would get back to work on my online businesses, on my campaigning, on my marketing, on my content creation, on sales, on business relationships and networking, on new business development, and that looked like a lot of different types of work, whether that was shooting content or, actually getting to know my customer. For the entire time he was away, my only, concern was him, the children, which is how it's always been. The kids have always been, my first and foremost concern since the day they were born. But it was him, my husband, so Dylan, my husband, my children, and my work. I worked out a lot. I ate as healthy as I possibly could. It definitely wasn't perfect, but that was what my life looked like. If I left the house, it was either to pick up the kids, pick up some money, or, go to the grocery store. It was just work, family, and, home life. So this savage living that we're actually, being forced to endure during this current time is brand new to me. And I have been through a lot of things in my adolescence. Homelessness for more than a week is not one of them. And when I say homelessness, I mean like I had friends, I had contact via phone, I had options, I just hadn't connected the dots yet. What they're putting me through now is they're blatantly isolating me from anyone who could or would help me. And that's a different set of circumstances. So let's go back. I think we left off. Dylan had come home from prison. My apartment had just been flooded 2 times. So right before Dylan got out, it seemed like my whole entire life fell apart. I had my own home. It was me and my 3 children who lived there. They lived with me 4 or 5 days a week, and then they'd go with their dad 2 or 3 days a week max, So they were mostly with me, 80 to 90% of the time of their lives. And it felt good. I enjoyed being kind of a single parent. I had a significant other to talk to things, to talk to about things, parenting topics and whatnot. And I also had, friends and family, both from the sides of my children's fathers, as well as my family, to discuss parenting. But just having my own space, my own life, my own existence, it just felt fantastic. Ever since I was a little girl, I kind of struggled to feel like I was in the right place when I was with my own family. And that doesn't mean I don't love them. I do, tremendously. And I miss them so very much. But I just never really felt fully, like I belong, like kind of like, if I was a child being raised by lions, you feel the love, but you just know something's different, right? So it was just kind of like that. And having my own children and then my own home, it made a different dynamic. There was a sense of accepting and belonging, even if it was just the physical environment that created it, and no one actually telling me or making me feel that way. So having my own physical environment where I felt safe, accepted, protected from the elements and all these things, it's necessary. It's necessary for everyone. It's most definitely necessary for me. And without it, I'm still accomplishing things, but I'm in an excruciating amount of pain while doing so. And it's happening at a snail's pace. I could have done, what I've done. What Xavier and I have done together has been extremely hard work. Not so much because it's hard, but because we're like going through absolute hell while also doing it. So you don't really meet or hear of things like that. Usually when you hear of these types of projects, myself personally, I would think like fancy production, tons of help. It's just him and I right now. So it's two of us doing all of this, the podcasting, the webisodes, the think tanks, all of that.
Our own catering.
We have, what'd you say, babe?
Our own catering.
Oh, he said our own catering, that too, so once we can develop this to a point where we can expand the team in a more hands-on way, I know it's just going to take off and fly through the roof. We've got a lot of good stuff to say and share, and it's just a very exciting time for us at GoPro Solo. Frustrating, but also exciting. So back to that, I just really, really want to set the tone that like this relationship with Dylan, this relationship prior to meeting Xavier, it was based on loyalty and trust and love and dedication, and that combined with coercion and grooming is what made it so dangerous. At the end, there was a time when I was so blinded and in such a fog that I seriously felt like there was nothing I would not do for this man. Even past my boundaries. And we discussed this briefly in the last podcast. I knew I was so uncomfortable with so many things. I just felt like I was bad or I was not a good wife if I didn't do them anyway. My hopes for when he came home, are what he communicated. When we talk about 4 to 5 to 6 30-minute conversations a day on a prison phone and promises are being made, that's 3 hours a day. If I'm awake 12 hours of the day and 3 hours of a 12-hour period are spent, being told I'm going to be taken care of for the rest of my life and that I'm the best thing ever and how much he loves me, well, I'm going to start to believe that, whether it's me actually believing it or me being brainwashed into believing it. Anything you hear repeatedly, you begin to believe, especially when it's 3-4 hours a day, right? So that's 25% of my awake time. If I follow Xavier around and for 3 hours a day, I tell him I'm getting us a mansion, I have the funding to do so, we're starting a production company, he's going to believe it. Because I'm monopolizing 25% of his energy and mental capacity to make him hear if he does not believe. Hearing is different than believing, but it all begins with hearing. Once you hear, you can listen, and once you listen, you can believe, right? So they're all stages of innocent coercion, persuasion, but that's what they are nonetheless, I like to use the words coercion and persuasion more specifically when I'm talking about something predatory. I feel like they have more of a predatory undertone. So I'll use persuasive when it comes to what we're discussing. But anytime, that you're trying to change the opinion of someone or influence the opinion of someone, those words apply and you have to be careful. Xavier and I just came up with a rule recently. It was ask me twice. If I still say no, just stop asking. It shouldn't have to be something that we say over and over to our partner or to anyone. But, and I recommend this for anyone who's had difficulty with boundary drawing, or standing up for yourself. Have that 3 strikes you're out rule where you give 2 chances to have your, it's not an opinion. What's the word I'm looking for? Your stance, your position, be heard. And that's it. If there has to be a 3rd time saying no, remove yourself. And I, for one, completely understand that we don't always have, the ability to remove ourselves physically, but you can remove yourself mentally. And whether that's humming, whether that's putting in your headphones, whether that's getting lost in a novel, we don't all have the same resources, but we can all get lost, right? We can all get lost. Maybe not our physical bodies, but most definitely our minds. And sometimes that's what we need, just to disengage, and change your focus. But poor Xavier, right? And Xavier could have been anyone. He could have been John. He could have been Bob. He could have been, Jose. He could have been anyone. It just so happened to be him who chose to invest into a relationship with me, who chose to, be sitting here and living through this time with me. But poor him, right? I have all of these fears, and I'm terrified to love this man because of how awful, and how blinded I was from loving the last one. So we have a lot of work to do, and this relationship is definitely going to be an uphill battle. But we're here for it, and we're excited to bring you guys along on the journey as well. Yeah, for sure.
I love you.
I love you too. So, Dylan and I were like super in love his entire prison sentence. About 3/4 of the way through, I started super, super duper hating and resenting him, because that was when I was able to pull my head out of the clouds and realize that maybe, just maybe, my original stance on monogamy was actually what I truly need and believe. And maybe I allowed him or fell victim or wasn't strong enough to be firm in my own belief system. And I blamed him entirely for pushing me and coercing me, back into that whole sexy scene. I wanted to just be with him, and he knew that. But he was anything other than supportive of that. It's just the way he did it. He was never like, no, babe, I don't like that. He was like, I only want to be with you, and I want no one to ever touch you. And as soon as I get home, no one is ever going to touch you again. You're all mine forever. And things of this nature playing into, a person's need to believe. That's one of the 48 laws of power. If you're not familiar with that book, I'll be referencing it a lot over the podcast because Dylan lived his life by those laws. And there are a lot of them that on the coming out of being coerced and brainwashed and groomed and extorted and used as a utensil, on the out side of that whole experience, I can look, at it, and how they say hindsight is 20/20. Well, for me, it might not be 20/20. I'm still unclear on a lot, but there's a lot that, is perfectly clear. And a lot of these lessons and teachings from the 48 laws of power, I never in a million years could have identified him using in real time. But when I talk about it out loud to someone else, or I try to make sense of it now, it's so easy. I'm like, oh my God, play into people's need to believe. Oh my God, look, he's doing fear mongering. And it's weird because you start to be able to see these abusive behaviors or manipulative behaviors. But again, in real time, it takes a whole lot of understanding and work and studying. So that's that. Basically went from me being resentful to him, to the love just not really being there in the way that we felt it. I could tell he loved me, and I know he knew that I loved him, but his actions, whether they were his fault or not, I don't know, they didn't make me feel loved. and I'm sure that the same is true vice versa. So he's on parole. He starts using drugs again, and I'm not a drug user. I'm a recreational drug trier, but I'm not a drug user or, a habitual drug, user or abuser. And he has a history of addiction. So I was so scared when I found out that he was, back using drugs again. And I, again, struggled with that whole, what is my role in this man's life? I've been his wife for the past 5 years. We have a prenuptial agreement. We, requested and petitioned the chaplain at the IDOC hundreds of times for the marriage to go through and filled out all the paperwork. But now I'm feeling him actively withdrawing from this relationship and doing things that I wouldn't want my husband to do. I tried to wife him. I tried to mother him. I tried to girlfriend him. I tried to friend him. What do I mean by that? By mother, I gave him the response similar to the one his mother would give him. Dylan, what the fuck is wrong with you? Are you crazy? Why are you doing that? You need to stop. Do you need to go to rehab? I'm calling your parole officer. I wifed him. I tried to just first be understanding and sit with him and say, okay, I'm not going to say anything, but this needs to stop, And then once he started becoming physical, I had no choice but to call. I tried to girlfriend him, not caring about anything, not asking questions and pretending like I didn't know, and just trying to live life while it was going on. And I tried to best friend him, no judgment, even participate at times. Whatever I could do to show him that I was there to support him into his sobriety, I genuinely tried to do, but none of it worked. And the situation just began to grow increasingly physically violent from him to me. The only thing I ever did to him was I threw a vase at him, not at him, but in his general direction. That didn't hit him. But after doing that, and I'm sitting there looking at the glass on the floor, I had never done that before. I had argued with men before. We had even had little scuffles, like, them holding me down or whatever, not regularly, but before. I had never destroyed any of my own property as a result of, a man making me angry or harming me. And I'm sitting there on my bed just thinking, I am not okay. And I had already been screaming and crying for help, saying I am not okay at the top of my lungs for 2-3 years. But I truly was just unable to even keep going at that point. So, it was a tremendous relationship in my life. I'll never forget it. And it's the beginning of the preceding. What's the word for coming up? It was the beginning of this period of my life, this period of being harassed, stalked, chased, robbed, beaten, abused, sexually assaulted, physically assaulted, targeted. It opened the door to this chapter. And that's why I always say all of the abuse that I've gone through begins and ends with Dylan. But it's a transformation from me being on the forefront of running my own businesses, which is all still happening, to me having to go through being on the forefront of running my own businesses and doing everything I've been doing while also mitigating being stalked, harassed, beaten, raped, abused, followed, parenting from afar, being separated from my children since 2020, with the exception of a few visits and phone calls, has been incredibly painful. And I escape that situation with my life, but there's a lot of liability. If you guys look at my socials or you've been following, all of this is all on there, and I apologize, I'm extremely exhausted. I've slept about a grand total of 6-7 hours over the last 4 days now, and it's been interrupted sleep, up every hour or two, just very uncomfortable. So in case you hear that in my voice, that's what's going on. But this is episode 4. I'm really happy that we're, getting here. I anticipate another 8 episodes that we'll discuss and touch on the previous 4 years of my life. and how we got here to where we are, which is, basically, like I said, separated from my children. I've spent 90% of my time living in Airbnbs over the past 4 years, the other 10% outside on the street, homeless. And when I say Airbnb, I mean Airbnb or like renting a room from a friend or, someone. But it's been rough, it's been very rough. They destroyed my vehicle. I had gotten my first car about a year before Dylan came home. I took out an auto loan I think I financed $14,000 a month after making my final payment. And while the car was parked in a gated community, I got keyed. Then they began destroying the vehicle mechanically until it just wouldn't run anymore. So I basically lost everything as a result of the relationship and the abuse. And that's what contributed to my situation being what it is today. Even that, I am a model, I am a producer, I am a medical professional, an administrative professional. All the things that I am exclude me from the things they're trying to make me be now. So what do I mean by that? They want so bad for me to be quote unquote homeless and, desolate and indigent and all of these things. But I could never be those things because the things that I am cancel those things out. I could never be dumb because I'm smart. I could never be, alone because I walk in faith. I can never be, homeless because I live in my body and my body lives in Chicago and Chicago lives in the world, right? So it changes. You have to start thinking like esoterically about everything in life. Otherwise, they just shit all over you, and you're left sitting there, wow, I'm just this homeless piece of shit who just fell in love with this guy on parole, got beaten, raped, abused, robbed, separated from her children, and then, left outside to be homeless and dirty and degraded and dehumanized. So you can't accept that, or you can, but you're not going to get very far accepting that. When the general public or society or the internet or the gossip columns want to shit on you, you have to pull hard to not shit on yourself. You have to reframe reality in a way that isn't a lie, in a way that makes you continue to have the will to live. Because at the end of the day, I could take myself out. Who am I really hurting? You think these bloggers give a fuck? No, they're the ones telling me, Heather, we won't stop bothering you until you kill yourself. Kill yourself, bitch. You're worthless. Kill yourself. So they clearly don't care if I die. My children would probably be affected pretty negatively. My friends and family, the ones who care about me, I'm sure they'd be pretty affected, right? So you reframe your reality and you make it match who you are, and then you eliminate all of the pieces about it that, make you who you are not. I have a home. My home is with my children. My home is, wherever they are. I've always had my own physical space. Someone took it away from me, and I am waiting and have been waiting, as well as taking active steps at resolution, for someone to intervene and assist me at resolving these issues. So take your situation and every single player who contributed to where you're at today. Thank them. Reframe it in a way that makes you feel good. Heather, you're homeless. That doesn't make me feel good. You know what makes me feel good? Heather, you are a fucking phenomenal statement model. You are so creative. You are a phenomenal writer. You are so articulate. You're open-minded. You're kind. You're compassionate. You're a great mother. We are so grateful to have this time of upheaval where we don't have a permanent physical structure that we're living in to hold us down. We are being forced to be creative every single day. We are being forced to get to know different areas of the city and be innovative with our time. You know why? Because there's a bigger calling for you. Because you're birthing an elephant. The production company you've always wanted, that you've been working on for the past 8 years, guess what? Now there's a podcast. Now there are webisodes drafted. Now there are 300 or 400 pages of a novel written. Now we're in talks of collaborations with other people. I didn't need to be homeless for all those things to happen. Like I said, those things were happening when I was in my home. But it is what it is. There are people responsible and it's wrong. Holding on to that doesn't propel me forward. Holding on to that keeps me back there with them. So from a production standpoint, as Xavier likes to say, we are out here and we are doing our absolute best to use our new circumstantial, environmental changes to our situation to propel us forward rather than pull us back down into the quicksand. And it's hard and it's unpleasant. I've spent the past 30 days now without a bed, sleeping in random places that are not made for sleeping. I strongly dislike it. Hate would be an accurate word, but I try not to use that word. And I miss my children terribly. But we're not going, and we're not slowing down. So photo shoots every week. My personal goals are 3 to 5 sets of photos every week that describe how I'm feeling visually. At least one new book a week, actively reading and contributing to developing, myself intellectually as I've been, staying active, designing at least 2 custom workouts a week, as well as all of the cardio and crunches and muscle and strength training, even if it means going into Target and doing a lift with their weights, making a way any and every way, every single day. That's the name of the game. So anyways, I love you guys. That was episode 4. I hope that you guys can follow my ADHD template. I like to discuss things this way. It's just the way my mind works, and I hope that there are people out there who can get it, because I know it's not the easiest or most sequential conversation. But anyways, I love you guys. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. We'll be back with episode 5. I can't even say next week because this week alone we've gotten 4 episodes and a 3.5 out. Go us. Xavier, do you want to say bye?
Yes. Thank you for tuning in. Thank you for tuning in.
Louder.
Thank you for tuning in. And we're staying busy.
All right, you guys.
All the projects.
Tons of projects. We love you guys. We'll check in later.